Well, here we are at another chapter. Tonight we might have a look at what drives their thinking, what makes them tick. We could probably start with calling them a shadow government, these secret societies that have been spoken of before. And before we go much further, I'll actually say to you that you're not going to get an Oxford scholar's grammar out of me. So I'm talking in a language that can be understood by Joe the plumber, and that's what I intend to do. And anybody else that wants to cut the BS and just get straight to it. Now let's talk about this shadow governmental group that seems to be moving us in a direction that's not so obvious to most, but has been wrote down by a lot of early writers. So they follow one chap in particular. George Wilhelm Hegel seems to be prominent in their thinking. He was born in Stuttgart in August 1770. He died in Berlin in 1831. Now Hegel was a philosopher, like Kant and Fichte. He seems to be listened to quite a bit by these guys, and they seem to follow along in his way of thinking. So if you know anything about the Skull and Bones order, and you can, I won't bore you with too much of that tonight, but you can look up Anthony Sutton's books, Introduction to the Order, how the Skull and Bones order controls education and so on. But they do follow Hegel quite a bit. The Hegelian dialectic. Cause conflict, stay in the shadows, come up with the answer. Have your thesis, your antithesis, and come up with a synthesis as a panacea to these problems that you've covertly caused in the first place. Anyhow, that seems to be the way they work. And Hegel is prominent in this. Now let's just have a quick look at Hegel. Hegel believes in no afterlife. And Marx was a believer in Hegel. Hegel is an anti-capitalist, an anti-free enterprise, an anti-individualist, an own nothing, be happy type chap, a bit like others you hear now saying this. No hope of an afterlife. Turn us all into no-hopers, I guess. Hegel seems to fit this holistic society, team leader, comrade, citizen type that seems to be upon us again. Cause conflict and bring about change. Shadow governments seem to be very popular with Hegel. Hegel also seems to fit in with those bohemians by the look of it, like Richard von Coudenhove. Have a look at Merkel, the way she followed along in those footsteps. And that's the miscegenation of the peoples. Look the word up. Miscegenation. Just dilute the race until you've dumbed them down to some kind of slave-type mindset. I guess that's their dream. They seem to be doing a little bit of this. Now, that seems to be what's going on out there, and we do have scriptures wrote that tells us things are going to be like it was in Egypt. Slaves were getting around then. Moses took them out of slavery, remember? And Sodom, no, we don't have to go into detail about Sodom, just read a woke book. And under the occupation of Rome, as it was where Christ was crucified. So you can read that in Revelation chapter 11, verse 8, about those three and things being like that again. So we have this group, and they seem to have found their way into Yale, as Anthony Sutton has gone to a lot of trouble to detail. We've got, for instance sake, this order, this Yale order, the likes of Prescott Bush and the Bushes and Kerry, and they sort of work in with the Harvardites like the rest of them. They have their little group over there. I think they were called the Scroll and Keys, known as Keysmen, I think. So this Yale group, who allegedly had the skull and bones of Geronimo dug up and stole, allegedly, from Fort Sill in Oklahoma by Prescott Bush. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. So I know the Native Americans are trying to get it back. But anyhow, this order seems to control the White House executive branch, the legislations, political parties, law, education, media, publishing, business, industry and commerce, churches, and banking and the Federal Reserve System. No doubt Andrew Jackson wouldn't have liked them at all. Now we seem to be going back a long time in time here, over 100 years, back to Prescott Bush. But we are going to bring you forward. Time doesn't matter to these guys. This goes through generations, right up till now. And there's all these new players now, and we'll get to them in another section of this podcast. We will get to these 10 horns that are coming. We'll find some billionaires that are manipulating things today. So we have these guys tied up with the old guys. The old guys were into Egypt as well. Back about 33, they put the pyramid on the dollar bill with the Eye of Horus in it. So once again, remember Egypt, remember Sodom, remember Rome. They keep coming up. So they seem to worship all this quite a bit. And they must know something we don't know, because they're very determined to get what they wish. And what they wish is a global control and a reset. What's coming or what's happening in the future that is motivating them. We will get to that as well. We'll get to these topics as we go along. So just at the moment, we are trying to inform you as to what makes them tick. So they like printing money, creating wars, running industrial military complexes, the very same that Eisenhower kicked up a stink about and didn't like, brought to their attention. So they seem to be spawned out of the Illuminati, and the Illuminati seems to come out of Bavaria and Ingolstadt University and Adam Weishaupt, and they're all Hegel followers. If you were to ask Hegel what good is parliaments and congresses, and he will say they are to give the peasant a choice when he really doesn't have a choice, and to take advantage of any wisdom that he or she may accidentally come up with, and you can remove it from them. So that's a little bit about the Hegelian dialectic and the skull and bones order at Yale. So you can see this pattern now that was branded a conspiracy theory 30, 40 years ago is in your face now. So when you see Kissinger back out there again, running around, talking to those at the top, at 100-year-old, And he did say he would be there till the end, that governments would come and governments would go, and he would make it to the end. And they're all working in together. You've got to take your hat off to their dedication and discipline to hang in there. There must be quite a bit at stake. You could probably read Psalms 110 to find out what's spooking them. So, and motivating them. So, together this powerful group are going around the world trying to bring about their grand global order that is a reset. I tend to think that the reset involves shifting from New York to Shanghai. That is my personal opinion. I think the focus and the center of global economics, industry, might and power is going to wind up in China. And they've set it up that way. So a little bit like shifting from Carthage to Rome and shifting the mercantile center, the center of trade and commerce, the financial hub and everything like that is moved, like it was moved from Carthage to Rome, but leaving the traders and those that they needed in place. That's what I believe they are doing, and I think Shanghai, keep your eye on Shanghai. This brand new order will be a multipolar order, but I don't think a fiat money system that's backed by nothing in a country that produces nothing is going to like that at all. I think the birds will fly out of her. You want to read that? I think you could probably read Revelations chapter 17 and 18, and they will give you a fairly good description of what is coming there. 17 explains it's a city that's been a harlot, and 18 says it is the center of trade and commerce, and it loses its manufacturing, it loses its trade, loses the plot eventually and goes into violence and becomes something very dysfunctional and unattractive, like I imagine Carthage was. And the Romans allegedly salted the grounds of Carthage, just across there from Sicily and Tunis, and then they shifted everything to Rome. But they left their other trading partners around the Mediterranean alone, and they become part of the Roman trading system. Will that happen again? I believe it kind of will. I think that's possible. But we will see. If that is the case, then they're going to cause this big conflict like Hegel tells them is a good recipe, and out of that they will come to a panacea, an answer. Oh, well, we'll do it this way now, that way's failed, and these are all fighting and carrying on. So we'll change everything to this new system. So, if they don't believe in an afterlife, they don't believe in individualism at all, and they don't believe in free enterprise system, the free enterprise system is out the gate as far as they're concerned, and everybody is a clone of each other, then that in itself is very obvious now that is what is taking place. So the money systems have got to come down shortly. They've got to come down like a deck of cards in a screaming heap. So that is a little bit of what this shadow government has got in the back of its head. You can have a look at Richard von Coudenhove, you'll find all sorts of Bohemian, Habsburgy ancestry there that seems to be part of the big company. Or as Queen Elizabeth said some time ago, that unseen force that directs man. So, that unseen force that directs mankind is maybe this crew, driven by something else. Maybe it's a little bit like the legend of Europa, where Zeus gets himself tired of Europa and gives it to Asia. Something to think about. Anyhow, we'll move on to the next topic. Thank you.